the Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Today's edition of the Spot Track Podcast is presented by Bettor Edge. It's a great time to visit bettoredge.com because March Madness is here, and this is the perfect place for March Madness. In fact, Spot Track, Brandon Kravitz, and I are running a March Madness tournament challenge. Great prizes, great experience. We're going to set the terms. You quickly fill this thing out before the brackets close, and let's have some fun and make some money. That's the point here. Safe, reliable payouts. You set the odds. You make the bets. You can go head to head. You can push it out to the world and see how many people want to latch on with you. It's way more control in terms of money and in terms of the gambling aspect than you're going to get at any of the other big, let's call them box store gambling sites right now. There's an iOS app. Get to the App Store and get that, or visit bettoredge.com and use code SPOTTRACK at sign up for $20 on the house. It's a great time to do that as well. Again, that's bettoredge.com. My name is Mike Ginnitti. It is Monday, March 17th. Happy St. Patrick's Day to all who celebrate, and happy NFL extension morning, because that's what we all woke up to this morning. Some of us earlier than others, when your phone rings off the hook that 2 Cincinnati Bengals wide receivers have been extended. And that's how I started my day, with a cup of coffee and some Bengals money. We'll certainly talk about that as much as possible without the full breakdowns. And of course, on the heels of that, a Derek Stingley Jr. market reset for the cornerback position. It was coming. This is the year of the cornerback. We've had a couple of years of the wide receiver and a decade of the quarterback, but it was time for this cornerback position to catch up. We'll get to that in just a few minutes as well. Just a quick roundabout with where we are with free agency and things like that. It's not at a standstill. It's at a point where things are processing, right? Not only us here at Spot Track trying to process official numbers as they become available. And by the way, I'm being more patient this year than I've ever been, because even the stuff that I'm getting handed is coming back a little bit off. So I'm waiting until I'm reading the legalese on these things so I can pull out incentive information and what's actually real and how these guarantees actually vest, because I don't want to tell the wrong story to you, even if it means we're going to have blanks on our site a little bit longer than usual this year. That's just how things are going to go, because it's really important right now that we have proper guaranteed data, which is the only thing that matters. So I'm going to talk to you about some of these extensions, but until I have that, I'm not going to go too deep. As you know, that's been my mantra. And I think this year more than ever, I'm really digging in my heels on that stuff. So, around the league, a couple nice defensive pieces have locked in. I don't think I mentioned last week the J.C. Horn extension with Carolina, which is certainly one of the benefactors, one of the reasons that Derek Stingley Jr.'s numbers are what they are. And we'll talk about that in a second. But that's a nice keep for Carolina, a team that's, could go either way right now. And I think Bryce Young figuring some things out late last year pushed them in a direction of, let's at least hold serve, right? And he's a big piece to that. He's a former number 8 overall pick back in 2021. And oh, by the way, he has the same agent as Derek Stingley Jr. So when it all comes down to it, you've got two guys being pitted against each other. One of them has been top of the market in Stingley Jr. basically every year of his rookie contract, and Horn's been a little bit more inconsistent. So you push the envelope on Horn's contract and you get the structure you want there with a team that has to overpay to keep him. Even though it's early, they have to overpay to keep this guy right now because they are not at the top of their contention window. So you do the work there, and then you translate all of that structure into what just happened with Derek Stingley Jr. on a team that is closing in on contention, closing in on a window that they really should be highly competitive in the AFC, despite the fact that it's an absolute behemoth at the top of that list right now. So some fascinating 1-2 dichotomies there, as we see quite a bit. Agents pitting their own players sort of against each other for financial gain in both elements. And I don't think either of these players are too ticked off about it. Let's put it that way. Because the Horn situation is really the foundation for, I think, where Sauce Gardner, Trent McDuffie, Christian Benford, Deron Bland, we got a whole slew more of cornerbacks that are going to bank off of this it's not so much that Horn got $25 million a year. It's obviously a great number, and it was $3 million more than anything else we've seen. Surtain did a really nice job of sort of setting this table, and now here we are now well above that. It's the structure of this Horn contract that really made me pause and maybe go back and read again. Full guarantees into 2027 and early guarantees each year, including $7 million in 2028. So that's 4 years down the line that he gets a $7 million early trigger, the guarantee mechanisms that were birthed with the Patrick Mahomes contract. So he's practically locked in for 4 years here, 4 out of the 5 years of the contract total. That's what carried over. And that's why Derek Stingley Jr.'s guarantee is $89 million, because this 4-year, $87.5 million practical guarantee for J.C. Horn paved the way for a better player in Stingley to structure his contract in this regard. So I believe that 5-year contract will look a lot like this, just on steroids. And of course it should. And if the Jets are going to keep Sauce Gardner, even though out loud publicly they're saying, we're not super thrilled about extending our players right now, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, and maybe even Sauce. Now the number's here. Now the structure's here. It's all in place. It's all in front of us now with back-to-back contracts from David Mulugheta, who year in and year out continues to push envelopes. It's going to be tough for the Jets to do what the Carolina Panthers have done here with a couple of players, which is keep a core together, despite the fact that there's really no light at the end of the tunnel here for this team to win meaningful ball games, outside of the fact that a couple of lightning in a bottle things hit this offseason. The Jets could have that happen. They certainly have a talented young core that has been undercoached, underutilized, whatever. But are they going to pay before they see any of it on the field? I'm not sure, especially with Justin Fields overpaid. Are they going to now double down or triple down on overpaying a player to sort of keep this crew together, or are they going to let things run towards free agency with some of those notable names? I think that's one of the big things to watch over the next 6 months or so, maybe even 12 months, because if things start to go well for the Jets, I would expect, even if it's in season, some of these players to be given the opportunity to negotiate. Now, look, I don't know if agents will at that point in time. If they smell free agency just a couple of weeks away, most agents probably hang up the phone and say, we'll talk when deadlines are available to us. Let's put it that way. But the Jets are now sort of on the clock. And by the way, so are the Chiefs. Okay. Because we've seen T. Higgins now be extended out of this franchise tag situation, which leaves only Trey Smith, who's going to get a contract that's similar to this discussion. Okay. I don't really care if it's $25 million a year and he's the highest average paid guard. Is it this strong? Okay. Does it have this much financial security to it? And I think it will, having seen where this interior alignment stuff is going. So Trey Smith and Trent McDuffie, a Pro Bowl cornerback who's entering year 4 here. Those are the 2 names out of Kansas City, really worth watching now for the next couple of weeks, especially with these cornerback contracts now officially out of the way here in terms of resetting. And then, of course, Dallas, who has 2 legitimate defensive players in Dron Bland, who's an interception machine, but isn't the shutdown corner that some of these other names we're talking about. You know what I mean? He's a little bit more vanity in terms of production, but he's going to be in this conversation. And if tier 2 was $19 million a year, probably right? If tier 1 was 24, 23, now tier 1's 30 and tier 1's 90 million guaranteed, or 75% guaranteed. Let's put it that way. And tier 1 of the percent of cap is over 10%. So is tier 2 9% of 280 million cap? You know where we're headed here. All right. So if your favorite cornerback was worth 20 million yesterday, it's probably closer to 23 million a year right now, times 3 years guaranteed. That's essentially where we're headed here. And it's a good thing, because as I tweeted immediately, I'm not so much looking at the vanity side of this, the APY. This is just a course correction. Okay. This is exactly what had to happen. It has been lagging for years and years and years because the wide receiver money seemingly came out of nowhere. Okay. When the quarterbacks got paid, I get it. It's a passing league. You can put all that stuff together. That doesn't mean that that the top 20% of that position was going to get maxed out. And that's essentially what we have here. Okay. We have 10 players over 28 million. Okay. And we now have one over 40. Right. I don't think that's accidental. I also don't know if that's sustainable, as I've mentioned here before. At some point in time, what's happening to the running backs, which is starting to plateau up a little bit again, right? But there was an aggressive, we're putting our feet down because we can't do this with one player. We need 4 on every team, 2 notable on every team. The fantasy rosters sort of started to dictate how the real life rosters actually had to be at that position. I have a feeling we're going to get there with the wide receiver stuff. And by the way, and we can transition now to Cincinnati, I have a feeling that Cincinnati's situation might be the straw, right? It might be the one situation. Now they got themselves into this, and I've gotten all my venting out on this, that there's no world where these 2 players should be having to be signed at the exact same time. It's just terrible financial staggering by them in a situation where Burrow's been locked up for 2+ years. You knew you had this defensive situation going on, not just Hendrickson, who needs money, but also you got to rebuild 60% of that defense based on what we've seen over the past couple of seasons. But now you're going to throw, simultaneous money into an escrow account on 2 players at the same position that are way above average. One is elite. One is top 2, top 3 in the sport, an absolute no doubter. And T. Higgins is a 1B, very, very high WR2, right? And the numbers look good in that regard. I'm not really gawking at either of the numbers. And just to get them on record here, Ja'Marr Chase, at least initially, 4 for 161 and change, 112 guaranteed. That's the highest APY at 40.25. That's the highest total value, 161 for a wide receiver. And it's the highest total guarantee at 112 for a wide receiver. So they're all there. And by the way, I think it's 14%. That's the highest percent of cap for an average salary for a wide receiver ever. He hits all the numbers out of the gate from a surface standpoint. And he should. Okay. He should, because he is top tier. He is top 2, top 3 at this position. And that's exactly what happens. I'll just say this because I tweeted it Friday. This could have been 32, 33. This could have been done before Justin Jefferson. Now, he probably said no, but there was a number. There was a number that existed last February that Cincinnati could have gone to, probably with the guarantee. All right. Probably with the guarantee that would have made him at least say, all right, let's sit down and talk this out a little bit. Okay. I get it. He betted on himself, and now he waited for 6 other wide receivers to sign contracts. And now here he is at number 1 at everything. He still should have been number 1 at everything last year, but number 1 at everything last year was $10 million less across the board. Jefferson hadn't signed. CeeDee Lamb hadn't signed. AJ Brown's contract wasn't on the books yet. Okay. So at minimum, okay. And you could have finagled this before. You could have done this before DJ Moore extended in Chicago and Amon-Ra St. Brown extended in Detroit. Okay. You could be down in the Jalen Waddle conversation. Now, Jalen Waddle's a WR2, and he secured $76 million on a 5-year contract. So if we're talking about a 3-year extension last year, which is what we would have been for Chase, all right, we're not getting to $100 million guaranteed, but 80% of whatever his new money would have been would have done it. And it probably would have been less than 112, right? Of course. And it probably would have been less than all of these other percentages we're talking about, because everything exploded the last couple Februaries and March. And there was certainly a number that Chase and his camp would have sat down on last February. So that's a mess. Okay. That is simply just slow playing a situation that you could have used. Let's just take the Myles Garrett situation, for instance. We know it. We know you want out. We're not entertaining offers to trade you because that's just not how we see our next couple of years going. But we know there's a number that will make everything you've said publicly go away. Let's find that number. An aggressive front office, and I realize that's never been Cincinnati's MO, could have done that with Ja'Marr Chase last February. And you can say that's reckless, but some would say that the numbers that he's just signed are more reckless because Joe Burrow's not only expensive today, but in about 50 months, okay, with about 3 years' time, he's going to need another historic contract extension. And unless you plan on considering starting completely over from the top down and trading Joe Burrow, which, I guess if the wheels fall off for the next couple of years and they're not actually contenders, we could get ourselves to that point. But unless that's the, an option on the table, that Joe Burrow contract is happening in 3 years. They're going to rip up the final 2 years of fluff and throw this thing into a, hyper gear. So if this Chase contract is a 3-year guarantee on that $112 million total guarantee, which comes out to very high, $38 million a year-ish, then it aligns with the fact that Joe Burrow needs a contract. If T. Higgins, which by the way, is probably just a straight 4-year contract. I don't believe he signed the franchise tag and then extended 4 years. Okay. So the franchise tag is gone. It was never signed. It was just a placeholder. He's on 4 for $115. We haven't seen the guarantees, but it's a 2-year guarantee. Okay. With probably a 3rd-year option guarantee, right? That's something that can vest for 2027 once we get there. So let's assume that Chase is guaranteed through 2027, that Higgins is a maybe guarantee through 2027. And then after 2027, Joe Burrow needs a new contract. That's what I'm telling you. That's what I'm telling you. The numbers, the guarantees, the structures, that's what's telling me. It means all 3 of these players are going to need some sort of contract within 2027 and 2028. So essentially what you've done here, and I don't disagree with it. I disagree with how we ramped up to this point. Okay. Because I think you could have saved yourself a significant amount of money. But we're here and these players are locked in. And I think they're going to do the exact same thing with Trey Hendrickson, by the way. Probably a 2-year guarantee with a 3rd-year option guarantee, despite his age. They are putting all of their chips, okay, from a structured guarantee financial pot into 2025, 2026, and maybe 2027. Okay. They can start to price some of the pieces off after the next 2 years. But if not, if they're still within range, and I think that's what we believe they are right now, because they really had a hell of a second half of the 2024 season to the point of where many of us wanted them to get into the postseason. You know what I mean? They were playing such good football when everybody was healthy and humming. They're not far away. They're a defense away, but they're not far away. So what this tells me is we didn't care about staggering. In fact, they might have purposely done exactly what I'm laying out here. We want to get everybody in a line so that whenever we deem this thing is over and the next iteration of the Cincinnati Bengals as contenders has to start from scratch, maybe not totally, right? I assume Joe Burrow is involved in that. We're going to be able to draw a line of demarcation and cut these things off the head and reset our finances and do a quick purge and then go forward from there. It's not a bad move for a small market team. It's really not. We see plenty of baseball teams that have success at times operate this way. Okay. They develop and draft, okay, to a point of where, all right, we know we have a core. We know we have some superstars. We can't help but not pay. We have to pay. And at the point we're going to pay, it's going to be an all-in move. All right. We're not going to dabble a couple of chips and hope to get the other side to bluff. Those days are done. Those small market teams can't operate that way. You know what I mean? And especially ones that actively aren't aggressive like Cincinnati has been. So it's not something I agree with. I don't like how we got here. I do like the numbers, and I'm looking forward to seeing the structures, though I do think the guarantees kind of speak for themselves in terms of the years. And we'll see going forward if this looks like I'm anticipating, which is big all in here, big all in next year, 75% all in 2027, depending on how some defensive things shake out, and then a very big red line after 2027 with just tons of options and maybes and who knows, and we'll see. They've afforded themselves that. They've paid for it. They've bought themselves a 2-year window of contention minimum. Now they got to go do the rest of the work. And that's, of course, why it's frustrating to have to see them doing all of this work within 48 hours. Okay. Chase and Higgins and probably Hendrickson here over the next day or two, I would assume, because it doesn't have to be this way. I mean, you can stagger your process to give yourself options. And oh, by the way, because what happens when you pay all at once and then you try to release all at once or trade all at once? The cashier flooding into an escrow account today becomes a pile of dead cap all at the same time in 2027 or 2028. That's really hard to do. It's really hard to manage that, right? So Denver, for instance, decided they were going to make 2024 a massive dead cap year, but they did so with the frame of mind that they also had 3 or 4 really big draft pick hits already on the roster. And then they went to April and hit on 1 or 2 more immediately. You know what I mean? That's really hard to do as well. But they had an understanding that was a possibility in 2024. So let's take on loads of dead cap, trade some pieces, release some players, and kind of purge ourselves in that regard and hope that really quickly we can flip this thing on the fly. Cincinnati's already written their dead cap script. So they have now 3 drafts, maybe 2 drafts, to prove to themselves that they can continue this thing and maybe open that window a little bit longer. Otherwise, I would expect this to be a very, very expedited all-in move for Cincinnati over the next couple of years. We'll have more when we see the contracts, and we'll break these things down piece by piece. Aaron Rodgers, and we're out of here because there's plenty of data to get to, and I don't want to sit here in front of the microphone too long. I totally get this, what he's doing. And I do believe that we're at a point right now where it's Vikings or nothing. Because too many times we get the money crossed up, we get his antics and his personality, and look, he has strung us out for a while here. Okay. And he strung the Packers out for a while, quite frankly. He certainly did so with the Jets at times. He's at the perfect moment right now to have the best available roster to him or nothing. And I believe that's truly where we're at. I don't think, and I certainly did coming into this whole scenario, I thought hooking up with a Mike Tomlin situation for a couple of years would have been a really nice way to walk out the door and finish this career. But I think that after some discussions and maybe having seen what's happened over the past couple of weeks, neither the Giants nor the Steelers look like they have improved themselves to any market degree. Now, you can tell me the Metcalf Pickens situation is better than they were at last year. There's no question about it. Is it more appealing to Aaron Rodgers? I'm not sure. He's been so specific about the weapons he's been with, the weapons he's liked, the type of people that he wants to play with, because he's heady. He expects certain things to happen on the field, and he will wear it on his shoulder when it doesn't happen. And this is one of the smartest quarterbacks we've had, okay, in modern football. And if he's looked at tape and doesn't like what he's seen from DK Metcalf just on tape, that's reason enough, okay, to not choose that opportunity for 2025 and maybe one more year after that. I know he's looked at tape in Minnesota, and I know he's seen plenty in Minnesota. And you can certainly understand why we're at a position right now, at least from a speculation standpoint, that he is looking at Justin Jefferson as a really nice way to finish your career. I get it. Now, I don't think money's a problem with what's happening right now in terms of the waiting game. It simply is this 1 year, and then he's going to be forcibly retired because they're going to have to give the keys to JJ McCarthy. Is there a chance that he's competing with JJ McCarthy all summer long? That's not something he wants to get into at age 41, headed to the Hall of Fame, literally 5 years to the day that he says, I'm done. So I get it. They're all a little weird. And the Giants, the Giants are willing to go all in because everybody's going to get fired if they don't. So they've probably made the best, the most elaborate offer to Rodgers in terms of money and who do you want us to get and all that stuff. You know, it's probably looked and sound a lot like the Jets situation a couple of years ago. But I'm not sure that he knows that will work. You know, I think he can read that room pretty well. And it certainly didn't work with the Jets. So if the Giants sort of look and smell like that, you know, Neighbors is great. So was Garrett Wilson. Okay. You know, the offensive line might be a tick better for the Giants. Maybe one or two players better, but it's not what Minnesota has, which is one of the top offensive lines in the league, the last 2 games of the year notwithstanding. So everything about Minnesota is a better fit for Aaron Rodgers right now, today. Is the money right? Is the term right? And is his stature in that organization cemented the second he signs that contract? To me, that's it. You know what I mean? He doesn't want to walk into a situation where he's Joe Flacco competing with Jameis Winston for a job. You know? By the way, those 2 names are probably getting the other positions that we talked about, right? Russell Wilson drops in one of those spots, and then it's probably Flacco or Winston for the other one. So talk about your quarterback carousel. We're not done yet. And I think all of these names are fun for our last 3 spots. But with Rodgers, I get it. I'm not going to kill him for the waiting game. It seems like a really complicated. I'm guessing Pittsburgh made a really nice offer, and I'm guessing he loved every minute of talking to Mike Tomlin about this. And Tomlin was probably gracious about how we're going to handle, you know, you walking away from this game whenever this contract is done, et cetera, et cetera. You know that everything that's been offered to him here has had really nice benefits to it. But he's going for football. Okay? He's going for legacy. He's going to try to win another division, another championship. You know, maybe there's a little throwback to the Green Bay stuff that he can get if he drops into Minnesota. The Brett Favre stuff is exhausting, but it's clearly the best fit. You know, there's no vanity with what he's doing here. He's not screwing us around by waiting. He's not playing any of his games. This is tough stuff. He's probably got way more money from the Giants. Way more. But that Minnesota situation is the right situation. I would assume something gets done here sooner or early this week. And then it just becomes, we have to understand exactly what the role is going to be. Is this a 1-year guarantee where he is just going to come in for one last hurrah, work with this roster, allow JJ McCarthy to ramp himself up fully for the entire offseason, and then for the in-season with Rodgers at the helm? Or is this a situation where, you know, Rodgers kind of did this to Jordan Love? He's going to come in. It's going to be a year to year. If Rodgers can still play at a high level, this is his team. And if we get to a point where we no longer need JJ McCarthy's services within his rookie contract, we'll start talking about that down the road as well. That's the fascinating thing if this relationship really does come to bay. So again, I have no hard feelings for where we are with this. I understand the negotiation side of it, and I understand that we're heading towards Minnesota because, you know, Justin Jefferson and that offensive line and that coaching staff and everything we saw with Darnold has got to be uberly appealing to the idea of Rodgers finishing things there. All right. Baseball rosters are going to start to finalize immediately this week. So I'll be on high alert with that. We've got, I think, 3 or 4 legitimate contract extensions in the NFL coming. We'll be breaking down those as soon as we get those. Please visit bettoredge.com. Join this March Madness challenge with us. Let's hope to get a couple hundred people in this thing and make it fun for the whole family. And get yourself $20 off using code SPOTTREK when you do it. For Scott Allen, my name is Mike Ginnitti. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Spot Trek Podcast.